Thank you so much for making time for this conversation, Shep. It's such an honor to have you here with me.
It is my pleasure and honor to be here as well. Thank you for having me.
Shep, to begin with, what really inspired you into getting into customer service? Because everyone has that unique why. What has been your why?
So it's been like, it was taught to me at a very young age. Believe it or not, I had my first business when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
I'm an entrepreneur from the very beginning. I started a birthday party business where I would go out and entertain kids. I did a magic show. And when I came home after my first show, it was after school one day. My mom picked me up. I was only 12. And she dropped me off at this home and I entertained the kids for about an hour. And I came back out and they paid me quite well to do that. And my mom said that evening, you need to write a thank you note to these people. I didn't know that's what you're supposed. I mean, I know you're always supposed to say thank you to your customers, but this was a little bit more of an extra step. And I liked that. Great idea. My dad said, great idea, but here's what I want you to do. A week from now, I want you to call. I want you to say thank you again, call the parents, and then ask them, were you happy with the show? And then get specific. What tricks did you like? You know, the magic tricks. And after you do this for a while, you'll hear the same tricks over and over again, but you'll also notice there are certain tricks they don't talk about. And it doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. They're just not ones that stand out. He said, get rid of those though, and try to replace them with tricks that they will talk about. And you'll keep getting better and better. Now, little did I know, that's number one, showing appreciation. Number two, asking for feedback. And number three, really important, and this is where a lot of companies fail, they get the feedback, but they don't act on the feedback. So the goal is to create a better experience the next time. And that's by process improvement. And so I did not realize at age 12, I was being taught the basics of customer service and experience. And they didn't call it that. But as I learned when I got out of college and I started to do my research and study so that I can start my speaking and training business, that's what it was. So I was kind of like, I'm not going to say I was born with it, but pretty close.
Yeah. Very interesting story, Shep. And I would like to know early on what really helped you understand about customer loyalty. What did you learn early on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really a student of, first of all, I learned to create the loyalty by really just delivering exactly what my clients wanted. And by the way, I graduated from doing kids' birthday parties to working for corporate events while I was in high school and college. So at a corporate level, you've got to, what do we do to make customers want to come back and do business with you again and again and again? And I think one of the primary ways of doing it is to instill confidence that every time they interact with you, every time they do business with you, they're going to have this consistent experience. And my goal, knowing that if a company called me to do a magic show while I was in college, they really didn't want to have to. There were lots of other details happening in this event. There was catering. There was managing the room, making sure it was staffed properly. There's so many things. I'm one tiny little piece of it, but I want to be the piece they don't have to worry about. Okay. So this is what I believe drove a lot of loyalty for me. And that was number one, I did a good job. Number two, I created a consistent experience. And number three, they didn't have to worry about me. They knew what they were going to get. And it was like the last thing. They know he's going to show up, do what he's supposed to do. In the context in our world, we need to create that environment too. I love it when a client once asked me, are you going to, how are you going to try to keep people on the phone and teach our agents to keep people on the phone for as long as it takes to make sure they're happy? Because I don't want that. We need to be looking at average handle time. And I said, average handle time is a great stat, but a terrible stat because it drives sometimes the wrong behavior. But here's what I want your people to do. By the time the call is finished, even if you want to try to shorten the handle time, they need to know that every time they have a problem, it's okay to call. We want them to do that. We'll give them the answers to what they need. They should be confident and they should use the word always in front of something positive like, oh, they're always so knowledgeable. They're always so helpful. They're always friendly. And if they use those words properly, you're going to start to create a pattern of repeat business and ultimately loyal business.
Absolutely. And Shep, if we talk about building customer loyalty, be it big or small business, what is that universal element that would stand true for all, according to you?
Yeah, well, I love the concept of loyalty, but let's understand what loyalty is not, okay? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
real important.
Yeah.
Loyalty is not repeat business. It
Mm-hmm.
can be indicative of loyalty, but repeat business by itself does not mean the customer is loyal. You must understand why the customer keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And that why is really important. Do they come back because your prices are lower? Do they
Mm-hmm.
come back because if you're, just as an example, if you're a retail store, is your location closer than the competitor's location? What happens if the competitor drops their price to be lower than yours or moves in closer to the customer? And all of a sudden the customer stops. But wait a minute, for the last 2 years, they've been coming in every month like a
Yeah.
loyal customer. They
Yeah.
were loyal, but not to you. They were loyal to the price or the location. So it's really important to understand. And I know that's an oversimplification, but keep in mind, we must understand the why behind a customer doing business with us again and again. And if we understand that why is tied to they love doing business with us because our people are friendly, helpful, knowledgeable, get them what they want. It's an easy, frictionless experience. In other words, we don't keep people on hold for an hour and a half waiting for their call. They know what they can depend on. There's a company here in the US that we use for website and domain hosting. It's called
Mm-hmm.
GoDaddy. And what
Yeah.
I love about GoDaddy is I have called many times for support. And often it's to renew a website or get rid of one and take it off because I have 50 URLs. Many companies do. I've never had to wait on hold for more than 2 minutes, ever.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, how do they do this? Okay. They're very efficiently staffed. They understand. That is one reason they've made life easy for me. And I realize they are lower price, but they're not the lowest price.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. So I'm willing, just like we have a study, we call it the 2021. By the way, I realize we're in 2022 now. The new study's coming out in the next month or so. But this is our benchmark study to understand customer behavior. And we go out and interview over 1,000 consumers and ask them questions like, and one of it is I want to know their tolerance level.
Mm-hmm.
How long do they wait before they get frustrated? And so we give them options. Is 1 minute good? Is 2 minutes too long? Is 5 minutes too long? Same thing. How long, if we send an email, are we willing to wait before we start to lose confidence in the company and have to feel like we email again? I want to know that information. And you know what? Your people want to know this information too. So anyway, these are all really important drivers to understand the stats and the facts about how our customers are thinking. And I recognize B2B is different than B2C, but not all that much different.
What would be the differentiating factor here, Shep?
Sure. So if I'm going to go, let's talk about a business to consumer model. Let's say it's a retail store. If I decide to go to a shopping mall, there's probably 20 different malls I can go to in my area. I choose to probably go to the one that's closest. And when I walk in, there's probably 10 stores where I can buy this sweater or these pants or whatever it is I'm wanting to buy. And if I walk into one store and don't see what it is that I want, I can go to another store. If I walk into a store and maybe I'm not super happy, I go to another store. The point is there's lots of options as a consumer for me to get the same products and services. But in the B2B world, oftentimes, and there may be 10 stores in this one mall, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of malls across the country that sell the same thing. And maybe I can get it online. But in the B2B world, there might only be 10 companies that sell in the whole world what it is that we sell. So the point I'm making is in a mall, in a retail environment, I may not be happy with what this store offers this time, but I'm going to be back to the mall and they're on the way as I walk through. I may stop in there again. But if I lose a customer in the B2B world, it could be a long time before that customer comes back and buys again what it is that I sell. We work with a company that's a manufacturer that sells huge pieces of robotic equipment, automation. And their customers replace the equipment about once every 12 to 15 years. If the company loses the customer because they failed to follow up properly and timely basis, in other words, they gave them a bad customer experience, it could be 12 years before that customer decides to give them a chance to buy again because they don't need what it is that they sell. So, I mean, I know that's an extreme example too, but you get the idea. I think the stakes are much higher for B2B than B2C, because if you
Mm-hmm.
lose a customer, it could be difficult to get that customer back.
Yes, yes. And at this point, Shep, I would like to know more about your book, I'll Be Back.
I love that. Where is that? Here, here it is. I'll be back. How to get
Yes.
customers to come back again and again. And so I love to write, and I write every week. All my
Mhm.
articles. I have a Forbes.com column that is weekly. I have my own blog and all that. Anyway, this book, I was working with a client, and we were talking about, how do you define loyal behavior and repeat business? And by the way, this particular client was in the hair salon business, okay, where you get your hair cut and colored. And I think it's funny, they hired me to speak to 1,000 managers and owners of hair salons, and I don't go there. You can see, no, there's no hair on my head. Anyway, but I do understand what drives their business. And what we were talking about was how they measure success. And they have all kinds of typical measurements, like the net promoter score on a scale of 0 to 10. What's the likelihood you'd recommend me? How did you like your haircut on a scale of 1 to whatever? Was it good, great, whatever? How did you like the service? Was the facility clean? Realizing that. And then we were talking, and the words that I used is that all of these metrics are history lessons. It's what happened yesterday. It's what happened when the customer came in before. It's not indicative of what's going to happen next time. But when the customer tells you all that was great, do they decide they're going to come back after that? That's the behavior. That's what we want to measure. And that's what this book is about. I realized that behavior is the ultimate metric, because they can say they love us, but until they come back again and again, it doesn't really mean anything. So we want to measure the behavior, and specifically, and let's use the hair salon as an industry to consider. I mean, I don't know if you get your hair cut somewhere. Do you go somewhere?
Yeah, yeah, I go.
And how often do you go?
Maybe once in 6 months or so.
Once every 6 months. Do you ever go to get it colored or permed or have any treatments done?
For coloring, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this hair salon would know you come every 6 months, you get your hair colored every, whatever it is. If you miss that 6 month mark and you don't come in, but then you come in 6 months after that, they're going to know you probably went somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to be tracking that behavior. And if you did go somewhere else, we need to figure out how to get you back into our doors. So understand the cadence. A lot of times, people who have hair, guys like me, if they have hair, they go in once every 4 to 6 weeks to get their hair cut. Okay. If that means you're going to come in, let's say, 8 times a year, 10 times a year. If we notice they're only coming in twice a year, we got to figure out why. So understanding the behavior becomes of the ultimate importance in tracking not just repeat business, but the ability to move them into loyalty. Now, again, I want to emphasize, I mentioned this earlier, just because they keep coming back, it doesn't mean they're loyal. Understand the why behind it. I love coming back here. Oh, this person is just so wonderful to work with. Whenever I call the support center, the contact center, these people are so helpful. I never have to wait. It's so easy to do business with them. These are the reasons that would compel a person to come here instead of somewhere else. And our stats and facts from our study prove that customers love convenience. They're willing to pay more for convenience. They're willing to pay more for better customer experience. And what that tells me is it makes price less relevant. So from that standpoint, it kind of helps insulate you from competition.
Yeah, yeah. And in this conversation, Shep, how do you look at the role of empathy?
Empathy. The word of 2020 and again 2021, perhaps 22 if we keep this crazy pandemic thing going.
Yes.
Because customers are frustrated, concerned, they're scared. Now, early in the pandemic, the empathy had to do with and this is really fascinating to me. I geek out over data like this. So we noticed that customers who would never want to use the phone, that were willing to go to a website to look at a frequently asked question, knowledge base, or use video tutorials, They said, no, I want to talk to a human being. Okay. They just wanted to
Yes.
talk to anybody. They were stuck at home in quarantine. And so we noticed that all over the world, support calls started to escalate their
Mm,
numbers. And the reason is because they just wanted people to talk to. They wanted to feel a connection. And
mm,
that word empathy is so powerful because that allows that agent to talk to the customer and hear and reflect back on comments and make that person feel good about what's happening. And if they
mm.
had a complaint, make that customer feel good about calling to get this complaint resolved. So
Right.
empathy becomes really important. Now, we've always had to have some degree of empathy, but in times of crisis, people fear. The fear manifests itself different ways: high
Mhm.
anxiety, even anger and frustration. And these
Yeah.
nice people normally wouldn't be that way, but now they're fearing for their businesses, they're fearing for their lives and their loved ones. And so we have to be a little bit more open to be understanding. That might mean your average handle time goes up a little bit in order to exhibit the empathy that you need to make the customer feel connected with you.
Mhm.
Back to the idea of loyalty. Loyalty involves not just a great experience, but some type of an emotional connection that that customer has with you. And if the emotional connection is easy, oh, easy, that's a relief. They're easy to do business with. If
Right.
it's, and I'll use the L word, love, I love doing business with them because, somebody like, whoever it is I'm talking to always takes care of me. They're so easy and they seem to care so much. That's emotional. It's not
Mhm.
just, I call, I get my answers, I move on.
Mhm, mhm. There's also the subject of mental health that has gained so much importance during the pandemic, right? There has been stress on the agent level, there has been stress on the management level, and also on the customer level. How do you suggest companies and top level management should look into this?
Great. So let's start with customers and first, okay? We already know what to do. We've already talked about empathy and what we
Yeah.
we need to do. And
Yeah.
different companies are going to focus on, if average handle time is really, really important, you got to recognize that you may not be giving that customer all
Mhm.
that they want. And I'm going to kind of go down a path and come right back to your question. We were working with a client that said, look, we just want to answer their questions and move on. We can be nice and friendly, and that's
Mhm.
fine. And then
Mhm.
I had another client who wanted to say, we want to try to do what we can to make sure they never call us again. Not because we don't want to hear from them, but because we did such a good job that they don't have to call us again. And
Right.
that means we've got to look at their profile, we've got to look at the data, their buying patterns, et cetera, et cetera. And we got to look for questions that they aren't asking for on this call
Mhm.
that they didn't think of, so we can answer them now. So we can say, oh, by the way, I know this isn't why you called, but my guess is if you stay on this long enough, you're going to end up calling us back over this. So let's deal with it right now so you don't have to call back.
Mhm.
So that first client doesn't want any part of that. They just want to answer the question, move on, because that's going to make the customer happy. But
Yeah.
the one that's going to feel even more connected is when that agent says, let's take a little extra moment to make sure we're answering all the questions and helping you for the future.
Mhm.
Really important. So we'll go there. That's a customer experience. Now let's talk about the agent experience. Many of them have been moved to a remote situation
Yeah.
and have not come back. We're seeing some contact centers bringing people back, but a lot of them have learned. We've adjusted, we've paid for the technology, and we've created the experience where people can work from home. To the leadership, your fear of this situation is that your contact center employees who work from home no longer have the connection to the company that they might have had they
Mhm.
worked in the company, where the manager comes by, pats them on the back, tells them they're doing a great job, answers a question if they're having a difficult time. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that that employee stays engaged at a level that makes them feel like they're still working for a company and not just a paycheck. Make
Mhm.
sense? All
Mhm.
right. Now let's talk about the managers. This is where actually most people don't think about this. Most of when we learned through a study, not my study, that managers were having a harder time with the remote situation than employees were, because they're used to being able to go around and sit down next to
Right.
somebody, listen
Right.
in, have a meeting real quick when it's needed. They can't do that remotely anymore. So we needed to work with clients on how to best interact. We suggested having daily huddles via whatever communication tool they were using.
Mhm.
Actually, we suggested more than one. The manager can have a main huddle in the morning or a meeting sometime during the day, maybe check-ins, and then be able to interact with people on a regular basis. That's their job. They're now like on the phone, so to speak, or on a video call, uh,
Yeah.
connecting with their team as needed, listening in on calls, watching feedback come through on whatever system they have, depending if that's available to them. They can then reach out, and that way the employee feels engaged with their management and
Mhm.
supervisors, and the supervisors and managers are able to still work with them. We actually suggest having what I would call an extracurricular events. They don't
Mhm.
have to be long. Hey, everybody, let's all have lunch tomorrow together. I realize we're going to take 2 or 3 shifts to have lunch, but I'll be on all of the lunch calls. And we this is a crazy thing we came up with during quarantine, but it works real well. We have an HR person, but it's not human resource. It's humor, HUMOR, humor resource. And their job was every day to go on to YouTube, find a funny video, a minute or two long, that would make us all smile and laugh together, and show that at our lunch meeting. We
Lovely.
did that every day. Now, you don't have to do that every day, but you get the idea. We're
Yeah.
engaging. We're having coffee breaks. We're having at the end of the day, hey, let's all, at the end of our shift, let's all meet for 10, 15 minutes and let's celebrate our day. We're going to
Mhm.
be doing those things. Now, leadership, that means people at the top, not people that are running the contact center.
Mhm.
They got to recognize just how important this is. The secret to making that happen is for them to spend time doing exactly what managers and supervisors are doing, and maybe even spend time as an actual support center person, if
Mhm.
that's possible, because that would allow them to get a feel for, number one, what customers are saying, but even more important, I believe, what employees are going through and what managers are having to do to keep their employees focused, on track, and feeling like they're included as part of the company.
Right, right. And on that note, Shep, do you really think that contact centers are getting the attention they actually deserve? And if not, what could be done to enhance that experience?
Great question. So, in some companies, the answer is absolutely yes. They are getting all the attention they deserve because leadership recognizes that the contact center is the contact center that is dealing directly with the customer. They're on the front line. I actually love the term revenue generation or repeat business department because that's what these people are doing. They're ensuring that the customer says, "I'll be back."
Yeah.
Back to easy. And so those companies have figured that out, and that's powerful. But here's what happens. Some companies view the contact center as a cost, not something that drives better revenue. Shame on them for not figuring that out. So I want the people listening to our interview to understand, if you are in a supervisor or management role in your contact center and you want your leadership to invest into spending more money and giving you a better, maybe it's a better solution, software, contact center solution, whatever it is, more training. The way you go about it is you create a case study. Number
Mhm.
one, look at the general stats and facts. There's plenty of them out there. We have a study. I mentioned the achieving customer amazement study, and
Mhm.
that's giving you stats and facts that'll tell you, and the typical customer will leave you after this many problems. They'll, et cetera, et cetera. So now we know what the general numbers are, and we should take a look at our numbers. What's our churn rate? How many
Mhm.
customers are we losing? What if we were to eliminate 10% of those customers from defecting and stay? When I say eliminate, what we're able to keep 10% of the customers that are leaving us. What would that look like financially to us? Okay, that's a pretty good number. How much would it cost for us to implement a new software solution if it would make the experience better for our customers, or maybe make the experience better internally for our agents? Which, by the way, is really important. We need to make the experience as easy and frictionless as possible for our internal people as well. And so, what would that cost? And if that cost is a fraction of what it is to save even just a sliver of
Mhm.
the customers that have been losing and churning out, well, maybe we should invest in that. C-suite
Mhm.
people or leadership of a company, they operate sometimes, by it's not really gut feeling, but they're really focused on the customer, which is soft,
Mhm.
but ultimately they need numbers. They want hard numbers
Right.
in order to make good decisions. And that's what we need to be
Right.
focused on when we approach that leadership level to invest in us.
Right, right. And Shep, since we are talking about contact centers, if I am the contact center representative, what are the skills and traits we are looking at here?
You're the contact center, would you say presentative?
Representative, yeah. If
Representative.
I'm, yeah.
Are you
So,
talking
what are
about
the skills
representative
and ideal traits? Yeah.
for to interact with the customer or to interact with
Yes,
leadership?
yes. Customers,
Customer.
customer.
Okay, great. You already used the word empathy. I think that's great. So here's my feeling. You can train people to move around screens and use the software. That's technical training. But the soft
Yeah.
skill of being able to interact with a customer the way you want them to interact is really important. So based on what you do, I want you to define what your perfect agent looks like. And one of the ways we suggest doing this is to find a behavioral style assessment. That could
Mm-hmm.
be, many people understand what the Myers-Briggs assessment is. That's not necessarily what we need. But if you've got like a DISC assessment, which is a personality profiling assessment, and you can take your agents,
Mm-hmm.
put them through this, and you say, who are our best agents? Let's take the top 10%. Let's look
Yeah.
at their behavioral styles. Interesting. They're all very similar. Let's look at our bottom 10 or 20%. Interesting. There's some similarities to those profiles as well. Now, as you're hiring people and you put them through the DISC profile or whatever profile you choose to use, you can start to match up their
Mm-hmm.
behavioral styles and traits with the best of the best. Now, this is not a guarantee, but it's a pretty good indicator that
Mm-hmm.
you're on the right track with the right person. Next is the right training. Training isn't something you did, it's something you do. So what we want to do is get them onboarded properly. That's where most of their training is going to happen. Let's not talk so much about the technical training,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always going to be happening because you're always going to be implementing a new something on your software, a new, program. You're going to need to educate them on a new product. I'm talking about the soft skills, the
Mm-hmm.
people. You need to constantly create what I call service awareness. What does good service look like? And so on a regular basis, I even suggest, some companies do it daily, but I would suggest at least weekly, spending just a few minutes to share examples of great experiences
Mm-hmm.
that your agents have created for customers.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to share these, and the way you get them is not by the manager observing and then sharing, it's by asking the agents, hey, you've got a homework assignment. It's only going to take 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What I want you to do is in the next couple of days, I want you to think about the best interaction that you had with a customer and write down 2-3 sentences. What did you do to make that magic for them? And then we'll share some of those at our next meeting, next Tuesday. And all you take 5-6 minutes to share several examples. And what happens if you get everybody to participate, then they start to say, oh, this is the one that I want to use. And no, this one's not good enough. I got a better one I'm going to find.
Mm-hmm.
You've created this level of what I call service awareness. And it's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And as a manager or supervisor, we want everybody to participate. Everybody sends them in, and then the manager calls a few people out to share theirs. And over time, hey, this time we used yours, but next time we're going to use somebody else and somebody else. Some of our clients do this daily. I'd say it, and that's wonderful if you can, but at a minimum, do it weekly. Again, 5 minutes. It's not long, but it's a powerful reinforcement of what you're trying to achieve.
So, Shep, on that note, what is here to stay in customer service, good times or bad? And what are some of the trends that we are looking at going forward in 2022?
So, number one, I believe nothing has changed in customer service. That's a bold statement. I wrote about that in a chapter in my book. And what I mean by that is since the beginning of time, when a customer has had a problem or a question, they reach out to somebody to help them. And at the end of that interaction, they want to be satisfied with the answer, happy with the resolution. That's 100 years from now. That's the same. Okay, from the very beginning of time. That's what customers want and expect. Nothing has changed as far as that goes. That said, what happens in between, from the customer saying, I need help or have a question, to when they get it resolved and they're happy, that has changed. We're using, or we're seeing more digital automation, chatbots, artificial intelligence, et cetera, happening to support the customer, and done the right way, it creates a better experience for the customer. So we're seeing constant improvement. Take a look. I remember, it had to be maybe 7, 8 years ago. I was working with IBM, small company worldwide. We know who they are. And they were creating that Watson experience with artificial intelligence. And they actually had me go through something called cognitive college to learn how to interact with a chatbot. And it may have been even longer than 6 or 8 years ago. But the idea was, I'm thinking, this is fascinating. I'm typing in, I'm interested in this product. And rather than the response coming back, here's your choices, it comes back with a question about what I just asked. So it's giving me a better and getting more and more information to give me a better experience. That's improving. The intelligent agent experience, which is vocal. It's like talking to somebody, but you're really talking to the computer, and it's starting to sound almost like you're really talking to a human. That's getting better. Now realize, I don't see it in the near future at all. This is not going to replace a human being supporting a customer. It's just creating a better automated experience. Eventually, the customer, in some cases, is going to say, oh my gosh, I'm not getting my questions answered. I need to talk to somebody. At that point, and this is getting better too, as I see a trend, the seamless transition from automation to a live agent. That is what they call a multi-channel or an omni-channel experience. Multi-channel is just multiple channels. Omni is a seamless experience. So that's improving. So I love how technology is improving and getting better and better. And I love the companies that push the envelope and try to experiment to make this happen, because it paves the road for all of us. Granted, I think that answers your question, but I'd like to add that, we can't look at customer service as a department. The customer support is a department, but customer service is cultural. It happens on the inside of a company, and it permeates from the CEO or the leadership's decision to drive a customer-focused culture throughout the entire organization. You've got your front line with your contact centers, but behind the scenes, you have people supporting the front line, and you have people involved in a process that supports the experience, even if they never see the customer. Every great company understands that, and that's why it's just part of their DNA. It's part of what they are. Here in the US, we have something, and I know it's worldwide. I'm not sure if it's where all of your customers are, but there's something called glassdoor.com. And this is a place for employees to rate their employers. Just as we want customers to rate our company. And if you take a look at the companies that have been rated the highest in customer satisfaction and experience, and you take a look at the companies that rate the highest of an employment experience, it's not uncommon to see those overlapping. And I see more and more companies joining that higher level of employee experience as they try to create a better customer experience.
Thank you so much, Shep, for sharing these insights. It's been such a great joy speaking with you today.
It's been my pleasure, as I said early on, and thank you for having me.